Something on Io wasn't supposed to change this fast. At first, it looked like a normal eruption. Bright, violent, temporary. Then it didn't stop. The same region kept glowing, expanding, intensifying, as if the surface itself was breaking open and staying open. NASA's data didn't match anything they had seen before. Not the scale, not the duration, not the pattern. Because eruptions like this fade. They cool. They disappear. This one didn't. And the longer they watched it, the less it behaved like a natural event. This is Io, and something about it shouldn't be happening. After the first anomaly was confirmed, scientists assumed it would fade. That's what always happens. On Io, eruptions are violent but temporary. They burst, they spread, and then they cool into darkness. But this one didn't. Days passed, then weeks, and the glow was still there. Not dimming, not collapsing, not behaving the way it should. And that's where things stop making sense. Because Io is already the most volcanically active place in the entire solar system. Its surface is constantly reshaped by eruptions so powerful they can be seen from space. But even here, there are limits. Patterns. Cycles. This didn't follow any of them. Instead of fading, the region began to expand. Slowly at first, then noticeably, as if something beneath the surface wasn't just erupting, but pushing upward. And that raised a question no one could ignore. What could keep an eruption alive this long? At first, the explanations were simple. Maybe it was a larger-than-usual magma chamber. Maybe the eruption had tapped into a deeper reservoir. But the data didn't support that. Because the heat signature wasn't just strong. It was sustained, consistent, almost fed. And that suggested something more complicated. Something continuous. Something that wasn't just a single event, but part of a larger system. And that's when scientists began looking beyond the eruption itself. Because Io doesn't exist in isolation. It orbits one of the most powerful objects in the solar system. A planet so massive, its gravity doesn't just pull, it stretches. And Io is caught in that pull. Constantly. As it moves around its orbit, the moon is squeezed, pulled apart, then released. Over and over again. Like a heartbeat. But that wasn't new. That's how Io has always worked. So why now? Why this eruption? Why this pattern? Because something about the timing didn't match. The intensity didn't match. And more importantly, the location didn't match. This eruption wasn't where scientists expected the strongest activity to occur. It appeared in a region that had been relatively stable, quiet, predictable, until it wasn't. And that shift made things worse. Because when predictable systems start behaving unpredictably, it means something deeper has changed. Something underneath the surface. Something we can't see. And then came another clue. Not from the surface, but from above it. Orbiting instruments detected unusual variations in the material being ejected into space. Not just more of it. Different. Particles behaving in unexpected ways. Moving at speeds that didn't quite align with previous eruptions. As if the force driving them had changed. Not stronger, but altered. And that raised a new possibility. What if this wasn't just an eruption? What if Io itself was shifting? Because for something like this to happen, multiple systems would have to change at once. Surface pressure, internal heat, gravitational stress, all aligning in a way they shouldn't. And that's not something we fully understand, because Io is already operating at the edge of what we consider stable. It's constantly being deformed, constantly being heated, constantly being reshaped. But even in that chaos, there is still structure, still predictability. Until now, because this event broke that pattern. And once a system like this breaks pattern, it doesn't just affect one region. It spreads, subtly, quietly, and then suddenly. Because the longer scientists observed Io, the more anomalies began to appear. Not just one eruption, not just one region, but small changes across the surface. Temperature variations where there shouldn't be any. Activity increasing in unexpected places. Almost as if the entire moon was responding, adjusting, reacting to something deeper. And that's when the question changed. It was no longer, what is this eruption? It became, what is happening to Io? Because if this isn't isolated, then it means something is affecting the entire system. Something larger than a single event. Something tied to the way Io exists in space itself. And if that's true, then the eruption was never the real anomaly. It was just the first sign. And whatever is causing it is still happening. If the eruption wasn't isolated, then something larger had to be driving it. Not just beneath the surface, but beyond it. because Io doesn't generate its energy alone. It's trapped in a system, locked between forces that never stop pulling. And when scientists looked closer at that system, they found something unsettling. The pressure on Io isn't constant anymore. It shifts, subtly, but enough to matter. As Io moves through its orbit, it doesn't just circle its planet. It gets stretched, compressed, then stretched again. A cycle that has repeated for millions of years. But now the pattern is slightly off. Not dramatically, not enough to notice at first, but enough to change how energy moves inside the moon. And that's where things become difficult to ignore, because even a small change in that cycle can release enormous amounts of heat, deep below the surface. Heat that doesn't stay contained. Heat that rises, builds, presses upward, until it has nowhere else to go. And when it reaches the surface, it doesn't just erupt, it forces its way out, continuously, relentlessly, which explains the eruption. But it doesn't explain everything, because the energy being released still doesn't fully match what we expect. It's too consistent, too stable, almost as if something is regulating it. And that shouldn't happen, because Io's system isn't controlled. It's chaotic, driven by gravity, by motion, by forces that don't balance neatly. And yet, this behavior suggests something closer to balance, something sustained. And that raises a possibility scientists are still trying to understand. What if Io isn't just reacting to external forces, but amplifying them? Because inside Io, the constant stretching doesn't just create heat. It creates movement. Massive currents of molten material shifting beneath the crust, flowing, circulating. And if those currents begin to align, even temporarily, they could focus energy in ways we don't fully predict, creating regions of sustained activity. Not random, not temporary, but prolonged. And that changes everything, because it means Io isn't just being affected, it's responding, adjusting to the forces acting on it, almost like a system trying to stabilize itself, but failing. And that's where the real concern begins, because systems that try to stabilize under constant stress don't always succeed. Sometimes they escalate, small changes build, pressure increases, and eventually something gives, not gradually, but all at once. And if that's happening here, then what we're seeing now might not be the peak. It might be the beginning, because Io sits inside one of the most powerful gravitational environments in the solar system, surrounded by forces that don't weaken, forces that don't stop. And if those forces are shifting, even slightly, then Io will feel it, more than anything else. Which means this isn't just about one moon. It's about the system it belongs to. Because if Io is changing, it could mean the balance of that entire system is shifting. And that's something we're not fully prepared to measure yet, because we don't watch these systems in real time. We catch glimpses, snapshots, moments, trying to piece together something that is constantly moving. And sometimes, we only realize something has changed after it already has. For a long time, Io was considered extreme, but understood. A violent world, a predictable kind of chaos. But now, that predictability is fading. The eruptions aren't behaving the way they should. The energy isn't following expected patterns. And the system driving all may not be as stable as we believed. And that changes the way we see it. Because Io was never supposed to surprise us like this. It was supposed to follow the rules, even if those rules were extreme. But now, it's doing something else. Something that suggests we don't fully understand the forces shaping it. And if we don't understand something this close, something we've studied for decades, then how much else in the universe are we misreading? How many systems look stable? Until they aren't, Io isn't just a volcanic moon anymore. It's a reminder that even in places we think we understand, something can shift, something can change. And when it does, we're often the last to know. If you want to explore more discoveries like this, the ones that challenge what we think we understand, make sure to subscribe. Because out there, beyond what we can fully see, there are systems still changing, and we're only just beginning to notice.